Hi, welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. NVIDIA's finally cutting GPU prices, not just on the 3000 series, but also on the RTX 4000 series. Why? Because of their horrible RTX 4060 Ti launch. We'll go through all of that, of course, in the video, as well as the best price to performance GPU right now in May of 2023, and whether you should buy now or just wait for future price cuts. Remember, if you get value out of the video, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here. And of course, subscribe and click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. With that, let's jump into it. Before that, this video is sponsored by VIP SCD Key. Say goodbye to crazy expensive Windows 10 licenses and that terrible Activate Windows 10 watermark. Right now, use the links in the video description, head over to VIP SCD Key, and get a Windows 10 Home or Pro OEM license for a great price. Pick your product license, then use the PC Builder discount code PC25 for an additional 25% off. Go to the activation settings on your PC, put in the code, and boom, you have a fully licensed Windows 10 for a crazy low price, which can be upgraded for free to Windows 11. Use the links in the video description below. Let's start off with those NVIDIA price cuts because they are absolutely insane right now, especially on the RTX 3000 series, but even on the 4000 series. I can't believe it. It looks like gamers are beginning to win the long war against AMD and NVIDIA's pricing, but let's be honest, it's mostly NVIDIA. Let's start off with the RTX 4090, get this stuff out of the way. If you want a 4090, you're paying now what you're paying a month ago, about $1,589. There's a couple MSRP units, mostly from Zotac. I do think that a lot of the 4090s at MSRP, for whatever reason, they seem to be drying up. And we got the RTX 4080 where NVIDIA is starting to give way. We've got a card at $1,099. Can you actually believe it? That is the Gigabyte Eagle model here for $1,149 with a $50 promo code that brings it down under $1,100. Still way too much for this GPU, way too much for it. Don't buy it, but I think you're starting to see the cracks in NVIDIA's armor and their line that they wouldn't even give the Pope a price cut even if it got them into heaven. I think that's the famous line from Jensen, right? RTX 4070 Ti, nothing to write home about, $799. They just got a couple more MSRP models are back in stock after selling out last month, but here's where it gets super interesting, and that's the RTX 4070, $559. You read that right, $559. That's the MSI Ventus model here, RTX 4070, 12 gigabyte with a $40 promo code, brings it to $549. Again, that's below MSRP on a card that just came out. I can't remember the last time we've seen this from NVIDIA. AMD's been doing it repeatedly, but NVIDIA never ever does that. That's why the 4080 still, still $1,200 months after it launched and nobody was buying it. Look at that, $40 off already. Let's take a quick detour down to the terrible launch that is the RTX 4060. I mean, I just don't know what NVIDIA is thinking here. $399 MSRP for an 8 gigabyte 1080p GPU. 1080p GPU for $400 in 2023, 2013, or 2023. NVIDIA, help me understand. And if you look, not a single one of these models is sold out yet. This is several days after they've gone live. I've been monitoring them. None of these models ever sold out. There were a couple models on here that said sold out for the first day, but they were never stocked in the first place. And when they finally did get stocked, they haven't sold out. If you just got $400 burning a hole in your pocket to get an 8 gigabyte 1080p card in 2023, here you go. But as a result, we can see the 3070 has gotten a $100 price cut. $100 off 20% from last month. That's right, 3070, Asus TUF Gaming RTX. It's not even like it's a terrible model either. This is a good model, sold and shipped by Newegg. RTX 3070 OC. Again, the problem with these cards, 8 gigs of VRAM in 2023 is just not enough for 1440p gaming, let alone 4K gaming, which is kind of initially what these were sold as, right? They were the 2080 Ti replacement, but the 2080 Ti had 11 gigs of VRAM. This thing only has 8 gigs, so yikes. There are some other models out there. I suspect we're gonna see them rapidly descend to the same price because there's the same performance as the 4060 Ti. And from here, it gets super wild. We got the RTX 3060 Ti down to $314. How is that even a thing? They had not even hit MSRP and now they're well below their MSRP. Again, same problem as the RTX 3070 right now. We got a couple models that if you don't want to do promo codes or anything, I don't know why that would be attractive. $332, $344. Here's the ones with the promo codes, $50 off right now. $314, because why would you spend $364 and get this model right here when you can get an RTX 4060 Ti for like $20 or $30 more? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense. And so I think we're going to see these prices rapidly collapsing. But here's what I think so many people have been waiting for so long: the RTX 3060 12GB finally under MSRP and finally under $300, down to $289. The 8GB model, which I don't necessarily recommend, it's quite a bit slower than the 12GB model, but it is faster than the 3050, down to $259 as well. Let's check these models out. Here's the 259 8GB card. Now, I don't count the single fan 3060 12GB card. We haven't counted in the past. I'm not going to start now, especially since for only $10 more, you can get a proper 2-fan card. The MSI event is here. And yes, look at this. You've got a number of these models now down under $300 for the first time in tons and tons of time. Now, this is probably because we are expecting the RTX 4060 to come in with only 8 gigs of VRAM, though. Only 8 gigs of VRAM. We'll talk about the difference between the 3060 12GB and all of its competitors right now, because the 3060 12GB suddenly is so much more interesting, especially with the 4060 launching at $299 with only 8 gigs of VRAM. This has got 12 gigs of VRAM on it, and I actually think it may outcompete some of the entries from AMD that we've been looking at. And finally, the RTX 3050 down to $219. That's like almost a 25% price cut. This is where this GPU should have been selling. It's basically a GTX 1660 Super that can use some of the more advanced NVIDIA DLSS features, etc., etc. You couldn't do those on the 1660 Super for $219, $229. There's also models on Amazon that are similarly priced, like $220 to $230. I think this is a sub $200 GPU. We'll see some of the AMD price cuts. They are not going to stand still and let NVIDIA cut everything down. To me, this is probably more like a $150 or $160 GPU. Maybe it'll get there. Quick check-in on the Intel GPUs, because Intel may be one of the big winners from the recent launches of the RX 7600, which we'll talk about, as well as the 4060 Ti, which we'll also talk about. Total disaster. They may be one of the big winners. So if you look at that ARC A750 right now, we've seen continuous price cuts. $249, $199. Now, just moments ago, it just popped back up to $249, but it was at Best Buy and at Newegg, down all the way to $199, so much so that we tweeted it out. And yeah, so a lot of people bought it. I think it may have sold at that price and come back now at $249. I expect this to probably be a new thing, $199 for ARC A750. We'll definitely have to check it out. Now, for the A770, you might say, oh, $349. I'm only tracking the versions of this card, because there is an 8GB version. I'm only tracking the versions of this card that have 16 gigs, because the performance is relatively mostly the same as the A750. The only real difference is the VRAM. So I think the A770 probably needs to come down in price. Let's jump over to the AMD side of things. And honestly, I was kind of excited about some of the price cuts we were seeing, especially at the lower end. I can't wait till we get the RX 6600. That's a huge price cut down there. But then NVIDIA dropped their big price cuts just this morning. So I am expecting, probably by the time this video goes live, that a lot of the numbers on this spreadsheet that you see here will even be lower. Remember, links to everything are down in the video description if you want to check out pricing right now, especially in your region. Let's start out with the RX 7900 XTX. Yeah, down $10, kind of who cares, right? This GPU is selling fine. This is AMD's high-end GPU. I think people really like this GPU. It's at a pretty good price right now, $979. Obviously, we'd always like to see it cheaper, but in terms of everything else on the market, it kind of crushes NVIDIA's other entries around this. And $979, not a bad price for it. With the $30 promo code, you get for $949. But the 7900 XT has been kind of the odd duck out, if you will, or the odd card out. And we see more price cuts for that card. Remember, it was $899 initially, now down to $759. Where is this going to end? Now, this is for the reference model. For $20 more, you can get a custom cooler model like the Sapphire Pulse here, but I still expect this GPU will probably continue to drop, especially if they're going to drop the price of the 4070 and possibly even 4070 Ti. On the RX 6950 XT, there was a card for $599 that literally sold out moments ago, so the best I can find right now is $619. But if you're looking to spend about $600, you can find these GPUs somewhere between $600 and $640, depending on the kind of model that you're looking for. This is over at Amazon, other custom card models over at Newegg as well. Then we've got the 6800 XT, and look at that, down to $499, down to $499. That's an excellent value. Remember, these are 16GB VRAM cards. VRAM is not an issue for most of the AMD lineup until we get to like the 7600, 6650 XT, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Right now, you've got the pick of the litter for a 1600 XT. You can get the Phantom Gaming one. I was suspicious around Black Friday when the prices dropped down to $515 if we'd ever see prices that low again, or if those cards were just completely sold out. Clearly, they've got a lot more of these left There's a ton more models out there, and you can find one anywhere from that $499 up to about $520. 6800, I honestly think is beginning to sell completely out. I cannot even find a lot of models out there, and when you do, there are these weird third-party listings for like $489. So we may have seen the last of the 6800, but look at that price cut on the 6700 and 6750 XT, down to $319 right now. MSI really seems to be leading the way on a lot of the price cuts, not just on the AMD side, but also on the NVIDIA side. They seem to see the handwriting on the wall, say like, let's get rid of these GPUs as fast as we can. We're gonna throw rebates on them. We're gonna throw promo codes. You can get a 6750 XT right now for $319 with a $10 rebate. That's insane. Remember, it's only 6% faster than the 6700 XT, but hey, 6% for free, I would take it. You should too. And a lot of these other GPUs down to $329 and even lower in some cases. Then we've got an odd duck, the RX 6700 10GB card, the non-XT. I know a lot of people have kept asking me to track this card. There's only a handful of models. It's not available in all regions. It is available in the US, so I have thrown it in here. It's down to $279 right now. You can get the XFX Speedster one. You can also get it on Amazon. I did see it on $269 yesterday. It flashes there for like 30 seconds and then it's back up to $279. Hey, it's the same price as effectively as AMD's new 7600, and it's got 2 more gigs of VRAM, and it has effectively the same rasterization performance, maybe not the same ray tracing performance, but who's going to ray trace with the RX 7600 anyway? Let's jump into the RX 7600, another problematic launch, not as bad as the RTX 4060 Ti. Of course, I'll give my thoughts on the price and performance and whether or not you should buy it later in the video. Let's just see how the launch is going for them. Down $269, obviously, at MSRP. Look at that. If you want to buy a card at MSRP, you got your pick of the litter. I actually think this XFX model did sell out. So maybe they're moving a little bit more volume than NVIDIA is of the RTX 4060 Ti. You know, either way, I suspect we're going to see prices on this GPU come down pretty quickly. Then we've got some spicier price cuts on like the RX 6650 XT down to $239. But you're asking yourself, hey, for about what, $50 more, I could have 4 more gigs of VRAM with the RTX 3060. Is it worth it? We'll talk about that later in the video. But right now, yeah, if you want one of these for $239, the MSI Mech Radeon, there's a couple other models out there for like more like $240, $250. It does bring things into question, and I suspect we're going to see some steep price cuts. And then finally, the GPU that I was super excited about seeing a huge price cut on yesterday was the RX 6600, down to $179, which you'd think, hey, Jason, that's Gigabyte Radeon, 3-fan model with a $20 promo code. That's amazing, right? All these other models are now down to $199. $200 GPUs are back, and then Intel cut its prices on its Arc A750, and then NVIDIA cut its price on the RTX 3050, which is not as fast as the 6600, by the way, not as fast, definitely leading for spicier kind of price cuts potentially on these GPUs. Will they pull an RX 580? Will we see these GPUs down to like $160, $150 soon? Let's quickly jump into the news about these terrible GPUs. 4060 Ti, absolute disaster, and the 7600, not quite as big of a nuclear Chernobyl style disaster as the 4060 Ti 8GB, but still bad, absolutely bad launch. And I don't know what these companies are thinking. I think they're finally beginning to sober up. We can see the price cuts the next day or in subsequent days. The GPU mining boom has been over since September of 2022 when Ethereum went to proof of stake and effectively killed GPU mining. GPU miners are not out there buying your cards in absolute droves at any price possible right now. You actually have to sell to your original intended customers, which are gamers, and we ain't buying this crap. And I know I was telling you during the GPU mining boom, like if you want one of these cards, go and buy it because we don't have any leverage right now. The GPU miners have all the leverage. Well, the GPU miners are gone, so now we do have the leverage again. So if you don't want to buy these cards, don't buy them right now. Buy something else instead, buy something used, or just hold on to what you got. Let's start off with the 4060 Ti, 8GB GPU. Here's the performance chart, 4060 Ti up here. Basically, it's a 3070. It's a 3070. That's the headline. It's a 3070 for $399, and the 3070 with only 8 gigs of VRAM won't even run some of the latest titles, especially ones that are, you know, ports from the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, because they have more unified memory that they can use for the video, and they're using that, and they're not optimizing these games, at least not well, for PC. And if you only have 8 gigs of VRAM, you're going to get textures that look like crap. Yes, the FPS might be higher than, say, like the 6700 5700 XT, 12 gigabyte, but the textures are going to look like garbage. So if you want good frame rates and you want good frames, you got to have more VRAM. Otherwise, you're getting more frames, but they're garbage looking frames. And if we look at the 7600 down here, it's basically a 6650 XT. It just doesn't make any sense why the card is priced higher than the 6650 XT. It should be priced around $200. And if you're interested in whether or not people are actually buying these GPUs, despite what reviewers and YouTubers like myself and other tech folks say, yeah, look at this. There's just basically no interest in these graphics cards. In Japan, right, the popular shopping district, they're one human being. One person showed up to buy the RTX 4060 Ti. Maybe they're just one person out there who hadn't read a review about that card. If we punch back through the RTX 4060 Ti at launch and we look through all the various models that are available out there, there's just tons and tons of them. Same with the 4070, same with the 4070 Ti. Nobody's buying these GPUs. And here's the great things. Right now, it's almost June as I'm filming this. We are expecting NVIDIA's second quarter earnings call in June. I can't wait to see how terrible it is, because that is the real thing that's going to force their hand when their stock price takes a massive hit and they start announcing earnings that look terrible because nobody's buying these garbage GPUs. And it shows. I think that's why we're seeing the RTX 3000 series price cuts right now, because they realize they've been trying to shuffle those cards off for as much money as they could. They've been largely unsuccessful at doing so because gamers don't want to buy them at these inflated prices. They're freaking out and they're cutting prices, and let them freak out. Let them freak out. I think AMD is going to start freaking out. I think we're going to see a price war like we have not seen in a long, long time. And this is fantastic for gamers. Let's quickly jump into used pricing. I just want to illustrate that in the used market, we're absolutely seeing the same price crashes that we're seeing in the new market. And a lot of it is reshuffling around VRAM. How much VRAM is on a GPU? Takes the RTX 3080, 10 gigabyte versus 12 gigabyte. Well, there's $100 price difference between $456 and $553. We're seeing that play out across the board. And we're seeing cards without 8 gigabytes, at least of VRAM, taking a massive hit in terms of their used prices right now. Gamers are paying attention to this and they're voting with their wallets. Looking at older series, RX 5000 and RX 500 series cards, you can see prices continue to drop. You can get an RX 570 right now for $69. The reason those prices have gone up, I'm only looking at 8 gigabyte cards. I'm no longer filtering 4 gigabyte cards. So for like the 5500 XT and the 570, the prices popped up a little bit because I'm only looking at 8 gig models. But even for an RX 580, 8 gigabyte, $83 right now, really, really insane values. And completing the picture with the 10 series and 20 series NVIDIA GPUs, you can see they're down all around about anywhere from about 9% up to 15%. Again, largely dependent on the amount of VRAM they have on the GPUs. You can see a card like a 1066 gigabyte falling down to $83. Now, the price on that had held steady around $120 until about 2 months ago, and it is completely cratered into the ground. Same with the GTX 1660 Supers out there as well. Let's jump into the best GPU for gaming 2023 in May. And as always, the spreadsheet link is down in the video description. You can jump in here, put in pricing and availability in your region. You can change the used versus new percentage as well, and you can kind of generate your own numbers. Just a quick note, the way we do this is we take the performance versus an RX 570, we divide it by the price, both used and new, and we get a price to performance. That's how we sort this. But big changes this month, we're gonna add in VRAM. I've added in VRAM for all the GPUs, and there's gonna be VRAM requirements for 1440p as well as 4K. And we've upped the scores needed to get into those categories themselves. You'll also note I have removed all GPUs that have less than 8 gigs of VRAM. I just cannot recommend that in 2023, anybody buy a GPU with less than 8 gigs of VRAM. You can get RX 580 for crying out loud with 8 gigs of VRAM for $83 right now. There's no reason to spend more on a GTX 1660 Super that, yes, will give you more rasterization in a lot of games, but probably will look like absolute garbage if you want to play like The Last of Us or any of these new titles coming down the pike. Let's jump into the best GPU under $200. And again, we're requiring at least 8 gigs of VRAM, both used and new. And look at that. We've got some changes because we've gotten rid of a lot of 6 gigabyte cards out of here. The RX 570 kind of remains a champion. It's $69 right now in terms of price to performance, but the GTX 1070 and 1070 Ti, not too far away and quite a bit more performance. Obviously, they're larger in terms of total dollars you have to spend, but if you can fork over about $120 $105 or $100. GTX 1070 looks pretty good right now. Then we've got a mixture of GPUs, including the RX 5700 XT, which, the price still around $154.73. The reason it's not as good a value anymore is because look at the bottom. If you want a new GPU, you can actually buy a new GPU under $200. What is going on? Because we can buy the RX 6600 right now for $179. Gives us roughly the same performance as the 5700 XT, and quite honestly, it comes with a warranty. It's brand new. I just don't see why you skip out on that card if you have about $180. That is the card that I would target. Although the ARC A750, again, if it does come back at that $199 price point, then it is really, really nice as well. Let's take a look at the high FPS 1080p GPUs. Now, this is where the gaming score is at least 180 and it has at least 8 gigs of VRAM, as well as the price has a cap of $300 because I just can't see spending more than $300 on a 1080p GPU. Let me know down in the comments if you disagree with me, if you want me to change that in the future, but I have put a price in this month. And we've got the RX 5700 and 5700 XT. Again, pretty good values out there, but honestly, the RX 6600 for $179 just makes so much sense right now. It's brand new. It does only have 8 gigs of VRAM. The GTX 1080 Ti is kind of a unicorn out there with its 11 gigs of VRAM. You can pick one up under $200 right now. However, I have seen benchmarks out there that the GTX 1080 Ti may not be keeping up as well with the newer cards. NVIDIA may not be giving it the driver updates it needs. So that's one reason to go something new. And of course, further on down the list, things do get quite interesting because if you're looking for a new GPU, RX 6650 XT, sure, for $239, but for only $50 more, and I said only $50 more, I know $50 is a lot at these price points, you get 12 gigs of VRAM with the RTX 3060, or if you want, for $279 and you want to stay AMD and get more performance, the Radeon RX 6700 non-XT right now gives you 10 gigs of VRAM, which should be plenty for 1080p levels of gaming kind of now and into the future. If we want 1440p, probably need a little bit more VRAM, and that's maybe where the 3060 comes in. So now all of a sudden, with these NVIDIA price cuts, we're seeing kind of more mud in the water, and it's not clear that GPUs like the RX 7600 even have a place out there. Maybe the 6650 XT needs to become a $200 GPU. Let's jump into the best 1440p GPU 2023 in May. This is where the GPU score is 220 or greater, and it has at least 10 gigs of VRAM, and I've removed the cost requirement. We're just taking a look at the top 10 in terms of price to performance, and we're targeting more like 144 hertz refresh rate here. We'll talk about 240 hertz cards in just a moment at 1440p. We've got our unicorn popping up there at the GTX 1080 Ti. God, that card, it looks more and more attractive the more I see it on these charts for just $200 right now with 11 gigs of VRAM. We talked about the 6700, but look at that, the RTX 3080, a used RTX 3080 right now for $456 with only 10 gigs of VRAM. Is it possible that that is at best a 1080p card or kind of low 1440p card already? The RX 6700 and 6750 XT, huge value GPUs, 12 gigs of VRAM. For me, that just makes so much sense. If you're targeting 144 FPS or 144 hertz refresh rate at 1440p, yeah, that's really, really nice. The RTX 2080 Ti kind of also nice in there at 11 gigs of VRAM, $358 used, quite a bit newer, obviously, than the 1080 Ti. And then AMD just really kind of crushes everything with the 6800 XT, 6950 XT, and the 6900 XT. Now, these are all new GPUs, I should say. So if you want those higher refresh rates and you don't mind spending a little bit more, yeah, that's kind of a nice lineup. Let's jump into the best 4K GPU 2023 in May. Now, I've changed this around. I used to bifurcate it between 60 FPS and 80 FPS or above, but I really think VRAM requirements is what it's all about. Now, let me know down in the comments if you think 16 gigabytes is too much. I almost went 12 here, but I said, you know what? If you're buying a GPU in 2023, you want to play 4K games now and at least a couple years into the future, I really think you got to get 16 gigs. I really think you got to get it, but if you disagree with me, let me know and let me know why that is. So obviously AMD is going to dominate here because their GPUs just have a lot more VRAM, but it's interesting to see that like 6800 XT, 6950 XT, 6900 XT, all pretty good values right now all below about $550-ish. But if you want to spend more than that, a used RTX 3090 sure looks good with 24 gigs of VRAM and about the same performance as this 7900 XT, but I probably want to have 24 and DLSS and other features on the 3090 do make it good. Now it is used, of course, you don't get a warranty, you don't get all that stuff, but if you don't mind spending around $1,000, the 7900 XTX really crushes it. The 4080, I just don't even know why it exists. That GPU needs to be a lot cheaper. And then of course, if you got all the monies and you want all the frames, obviously you're going to buy an RTX 4090. No one is disputing that whatsoever. Let's play everyone's favorite game. Should you buy now or should you wait? Well, my goodness, what is going on in the GPU space? We got massive price cuts from AMD, from NVIDIA, and even Intel. Isn't it so much more dynamic to have 3 players in there, all kind of tugging on each other, rather than just a tug war between these two? I love the 3rd player in there. Frankly, I'd love to see 4 players in there. So right now we see a massive potential price war breaking out in the GPU space. At the high end, what's my advice for high-end buyers? I don't think you're going to benefit from it. The 4090 is not going to go down in price. The 7900 XTX, yeah, maybe you'll get another 30 or 40 bucks, but if you're already spending that much money, you're really going to wait a couple months to save another 30 or 40 bucks? It doesn't make any sense. Just go ahead and buy those GPUs. More in the mid-range, gosh, unless you're going to buy an RX 6000 series card for about $500, maybe $600, I think those are good value. I would say wait. Let's see what AMD does in the mid-range over the next couple months. Let's see what the 4060 Ti, the 16 gigabyte version actually comes in at. I suspect we're not going to see it at the, $499 price point. I think we're going to see it a little lower. I don't think the 4060 Ti at 8 gigabytes is going to really survive at $400 either. These companies cannot defy gravity, okay? And once their earnings start pouring out in June, that's when I expect some serious price cuts. For low-end buyers, what would I do right now? I'd probably wait it out as well. The 4060 is coming. It's only an 8 gigabyte card. Frankly, the 3060 to me right now, if you've got about $300 to spend on a GPU, I would either get the NVIDIA RTX 3060 12 gigabyte card, or I'd get an RX 6700 XT. In fact, the 6700 XT 12 gig is probably my overall pick right now at $320. That's just a monster value. If you got less than $200 to spend, the RX 6600, possibly the RK 750 makes a lot of sense. So those are my picks, but I do think things are going to continue to cut prices as we go down into the summer. Remember, if you got value out of the video, please give it a like, as it makes a huge difference to the channel. And of course, subscribe and click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. Looking for more cool content? Check out the CPU price market right now. We got major CPU price cuts as well by both AMD and Intel. Is it a great time to build a PC? Check out this video to find out, and we'll catch you on the next one.